Whoops, I have this on.
What do you have on?
The announcement channel. That's what I had on for a second.
Stop.
I was like, all you saw
bitches.
was my face. I was like, excuse me. I'm not the
Hello.
highlight here.
This is Witches Betwixt, episode 101.
101.
Ugh.
Reached our
yeah.
100
That was terrible.
threshold. We actually have a topic today. Look at us being
We do?
organized.
Wow.
We do have a topic. It was what we suggested last time, which was kind of like store-bought things versus homemade magic, and kind of talking about that.
Oh.
Yeah, I know Scott was pretty
Yeah.
excited about that topic.
Yeah, I got some thoughts.
Well, why don't you take us on off the top then,
Yeah.
Scott?
Why don't you start us
All
off?
right, yeah, I haven't done that in a while. Sure.
Mhm.
So I used to think about this a lot. In I wouldn't say the earlier years of my craft, but definitely that sweet middle spot. And it was funny because I used to fall on this whole like, I feel so much better when I use my own stuff, blah blah blah. And it was actually funny because it actually took like a very rude, popular practitioner who kind of like put me in my place a little bit,
Hmm.
kind of gave me perspective.
Hmm.
They definitely could have said what they said a little bit nicer, but essentially he was like, we all, of course, like we all connect to our own stuff, right?
Right.
But he made a good point that it's like, he's like, what if it's maybe about who's making it? You know what I'm saying? Like, you can't, I not to be mean, but you can't trust everybody
No.
selling magic stuff.
No,
You know,
you
like, I happen to know pretty firsthand that a lot of these things, like on Etsy, when you see like charged whatever from whatever before, like all this other stuff, they probably held their hand over it for 2 seconds and made pretend to chant over it, and where they're like, it was charged from the first moon of the year to the no, a lot of the time it wasn't. Like it's just a fact. But
have to do your
sometimes,
homework into the seller.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it is.
Right. Sometimes like if you shop at Mandragora Witchery, here's a plug for Jim.
Right, you know
Etsy.
what you're getting.
You are getting
Legit stuff.
legitimate, endorsed magical
Legit
products.
witch shit. That's the tagline.
Exactly.
Legit witch shit.
Legit witch shit.
Which
But yeah, so like
Can
I
say one
really
thing on that?
What's
Mhm.
that?
The price is right. You'll know a real magician when they actually value their skills and don't undercharge. Like the legit magicians I've seen who are like doing fucking things from like Tibet, for example, and I'm not going to elaborate on that because my friend has asked me not to elaborate on that, so I
Mhm.
won't. But like there are monks in Tibet who sell amulets and shit, right?
Mhm.
And they're legit as fuck, but they're like several $100s per amulet, as you would expect it to be if they put like as much time and work as they went into it, right?
Mhm.
So if someone says it's been charged for like a year, would you really work on something for a full calendar year and charge someone $20 for
I
it?
just feel like
think about
that's
it
at
for a
least
second.
$1 a day. You know what I mean? Like
At
$1 for
least.
every day of the year.
Yeah, the prices will be right. It will be
Yeah.
fucking expensive to get real magic. That's just how it is.
Yeah. But you were saying, Scott?
No, I will also say that there tends it's reasonably priced in the expensive range.
For the
Like
thing that
when
you're
you're
looking
seeing
for.
something that's like $5,000,
Right.
that's also probably fake.
Big agree.
Yeah.
Like take who do I follow? I talk about this guy on here a lot. Marcus R. McCoy. He owns and runs Troll Cunning Forge. He's
Yeah.
a traditional practicing blacksmith. And when I say that, I mean he's a blacksmith with magical powers, as blacksmiths once were. And
Just dropping that little fact on you.
he charges what he's worth, you know what I'm saying, but his work is never how do I put this, like
Doesn't
it never
disappoint.
seems so ridiculous, you know what I mean.
Yes.
It's worth a pretty penny, and you're gonna spend, but you're actually spending for the time and the effort, and he knows what to quench
Mhm.
what metals and when to work those metals at what time is appropriate of the year and the hour, and what materia using animal parts and other, etc. Essentially as
Mhm.
quenches or magical potions. Like it's amazing. Um, but yeah, I essentially I totally agree with Sophia. That's what I'm getting
Yeah.
at. But yeah,
And like I said, the
think.
price will be right. It won't be like gouge levels. It will be expensive, but it will be in that bracket. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think, like I said too, it's like a matter of really, really doing your, like Jay said, doing your homework on who you're getting your stuff from. Like you can't get your oils from everybody, because you see, the thing about magic is, anyone can put herbs into a carrier oil and say this is a protection oil. But there's a difference between an actual, potion, versus herbs in an oil. You know what I'm saying?
Where
Exactly.
would
Yeah.
you say that distinction is? Because I think sometimes that's the hardest thing to define, is what that
So,
distinction is.
I mean, so for me, I'm only going to speak for myself here. First things first is that I think wort cunning and the practice of herbal alchemy, and making of potions and physics and whatnot, it for me, it's largely spirit working.
Mm.
Those plants are spirits, and when I'm putting those things together, I am talking in active communication with the spirit of the plants that I have before me, and I'm like, look, this is what I'm going for, this is what I'm trying to make happen, but I'm trying to reduce, I need it to happen this way and not this way.
Right.
And you have to, when you're putting herbs together, you want to be very aware of what the herb does and what it doesn't do. Things can protect you in different ways. You know what I'm saying? Things can defend you, active defense, in different ways. These things they're not all the same. You want to know what to put together and what's going to work well together, versus what you're just you're going to put in there and it gets all muddled and it gets strange. So for me, I'm in active communication with the spirits involved, putting them into an oil, an active, a base oil, carrier oil, and at that point, then it is being, I know we use charged. I'll just use charged for the sake of it, but consecrated and charged for its intended purpose. Using ritual means, right?
What I was thinking, I was thinking this too, because as a shop owner, right? So I'm starting to we have all the the print on demand merch on the shop, but I have not yet put in the stuff that I make, like the powders or the keys, the skeleton keys that I find at flea markets, and I kind of I'm drawn to whatever energies are coming from that key. So but when I brought the keys home, for instance, and the railroad spikes and really anything that I get from a flea market, I always cleanse it. You know what I mean? You kind of just cleanse it and detach it from any anything it picks up, you know. So
I'm gonna take a page from Fish's book, and I don't always cleanse shit because sometimes the resonant energies they picked up from an area is what I want out of them.
right, that is
Right.
also a good point too. But it's just my general rule of thumb when I buy things from flea markets is I just kind of cleanse them and kind of detach any sort of negative attachments that may be on them, and that's what I do. But I was thinking, because when I sell these keys, I definitely want them to be definitely more consecrated and blessed, not just this very quick kind of thing I do, because I just lay all the objects out and I do a very quick cleansing of the items. So it's not anything really intense. So but I'm thinking so when I go to, suppose someone purchases one of these keys, I just feel at that time, then I'll be okay, so someone has purchased one of these keys. Then I'm going to sit down and going to take the key out, and then I'm going to do a much more in-depth sort of consecration blessing kind of thing, because that's what I'm saying, this. But I just feel like if you had the key and then you did the deep like consecration and blessing, right? And then like you shoved it in a drawer, like it's product inventory, right? And then someone's like, "Oh, I want to buy this blessed key." Take the key out that's been sitting in the drawer for 6 months, whatever, throw it in an envelope and send it out. I just feel like even though it was once blessed and charged or consecrated or however you want to put that, it needs to be redone before it gets sent out. Like it needs to be refreshed. You can't just be like, "Yeah, I blessed like batch of 16 keys last month," and
Right.
like
See, with,
Go ahead, Scott.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
All
All right.
I was gonna reference something. You can go ahead and say first. Canadian standoff.
I know. Go ahead. You're good.
Okay,
I
fine.
misunderstood.
There's an apothecary over here called the Seven Sisters Apothecary. I'll plug because Scott knows about them.
They're
They do the
awesome.
exact opposite of what Jay is talking about. Like I'm wearing a key that's charged from there, and I want to say it's to Hecate, right? And when you go into the shop, it's not like other witchcraft places where like they have their stuff in like bags under the counter, right? Like everything's laid out like you're walking into a fucking temple, okay? And it's like a temple you buy shit off of, right? So there's like a bowl where you can tell the keys are
See
constantly
previous
getting
episode
charged
number.
because they're on a fucking altar dedicated to like Hecate, you know? Boom, right there. You pick the key off of the altar and you buy it from the front, right? I can't explain how good going to a real witchcraft shop that actually puts their fucking effort in as opposed to like one that just buys some statuettes, puts them behind glass, and charges you way too much for oils, right? I don't want that. Like, I'm not gonna throw shade at the occult shop in Toronto. They're actually great by comparison. I wouldn't put them on the tier as Seven Sisters because that's like fucking S tier. You know what I mean? But like occult shops, at least like A tier or B tier for like the GTA. It's pretty good, you know.
I will say, Jim actually helped me out a lot because he worked at an occult shop and then now he's doing his own, you know, stuff online. And so when I was building out my prices for stuff, he actually offered. He was like, "Hey, if you want me to look over your prices or anything, like I'll let you know if you're selling yourself short or if you're too ridiculous." The only thing that I priced myself correctly on was eggshell powder. That is it. I undercut myself on every single other product. And that just stems from like me. Like I'm like I know people don't have money. You know what I mean? Like I know people are broke, but also like I know that. But he's like, yeah, but if you're selling at that rate, like you're still gonna be broke. Like you're still gonna be broke. You know what I mean? So it was kind of like he's like, you're selling a service, you're selling magic, and he's like, and I hate to say like you're selling magic, but like you are, and so you have to have that sort of price because he's like you can't really once you set a price you're kind of locked in for life. You really can't raise it honestly when it comes to like spiritual services. It's kind of like once you set a price you really can't raise it. He's like you can drop it for like sales and you know whatnot. He's like but if you just start you're like oh well you know this service is now $5 more and now it's $3 more. It's not a good look. So he's like
if you do that you typically have to like re-get your whole clientele base too.
Right. Yeah. And he's like, so you want to like finalize and set on a price that is fair, but still has that sort of like premium to it, I guess. It's kind of like what he was saying, but it does make sense. It absolutely makes sense. And there's different tiers of stores too. Like another thing that he was telling me is, so I was super excited when I found this Botanica around the corner from my house. I was very excited that like I was able to go in and like buy things because I don't get to access that a lot. Like I just don't get to see them. So we went in and I was like, oh cool, they got like all these floor washes and stuff and these sprays and really good for candles too. Botanicas are great for candles of all colors and figure candles too if that's what you're looking for. But I was really excited about this and I thought this was like this really like big really cool thing. And I come to find out that like a lot of these things that the Botanicas buy, they buy them from wholesalers. And a lot of like the St. Michael spray, for instance, is really just fragrance number, blah, 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 blah. They're like chemicals, essentially. They're like chemical, like artificial scents and shit like that. And so they're not like...
It's not like
Yeah, it's not like
pressed herbs
natural.
or
Yeah,
anything.
pressed herbs. Yeah, and so and I was saying, but I was like, yeah, but I was like, but so like I used the St. Michael spray for instance, like this one time, and I definitely because I used it ritualistically, right? So like I'm in the mindset, going through the motions, using it, and the fragrance was good. So like the fragrance helped me like mentally kind of break out of whatever was going on. So it's like magic can be very like it's like psychological. I don't know.
Spiritual,
Psycho
spiritual.
spiritual. Yeah, because I was saying to him, I was like, well, I definitely had an experience where I used the St. Michael spray, despite that it was made out of chemical number, blah, 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 blah. I used it ritualistically. I had my St. Michael's pendant on, and, I felt something, right, when I did that. And, I guess, like, because sometimes I have trouble believing in magic, right? So it's like, sometimes I'm like, well, are these products real? Like, are they doing anything? And so kind of like what we settled on was like, what they'll do is they can help you set yourself like psychologically into what you're doing. So like especially fragrance like plays a big role in that. Like you can smell a certain fragrance and be like, oh god, oh, and then you're like all upset feeling, or like you smell something good and you're like, oh wow, like that makes me feel calm or happy or excited or whatever. And so I learned that like botanicas are kind of like on the lower end of like quality, I guess you could say, in the metaphysical occult world. And then followed
What are
by
essential
like
oils on top?
yeah, like so botanicas are like I think he said they were kind of like the dollar store equivalent, like in the occult world, sort of. Um and then followed by like, and then also, we have different tiers of occult shops and there's a lot of different varieties. But I thought that was very interesting. It was an interesting conversation I had with him.
I want to segue back to something that you reminded me of when you were talking about like the herbs and stuff. Scott was giving an example of how when they work with herbs, they're working with the spirit of the herb, right? A really good example of this, and I don't have this original story. I want to say I pulled it from down at the crossroads. Um,
Mm.
there's an interview where somebody talks about how way back in the day, and you're gonna like this because the herb is called rue.
Mm.
They used to put rue in little bags around sick
Lol.
cows' neck as a remedy to help them get better, right? And then after the farmers saw, well, you're just putting this herb in this bag, I can do that. They would try to repeat what the folk practitioners were doing to no success whatsoever, right? So there was a demonstrable, at least back in the day, difference between taking an herb that you had procured yourself without any practice or ritual behind and placing it around a cow's neck versus somebody who had like an intergenerational practice, though it doesn't necessarily have to be that, right? But a legitimate practice nonetheless, who comes, works with the spirit of the plant, asks some of their favors, gets the agreement, gives an offering in turn for the plant's spirit, and makes an agreement, right? It's an entirely different fucking circumstance and situation rather than like placing herbs around a cow's neck, right? In fact, that's going to become my favorite metaphor for doing magic
Yeah,
by understanding the steps without actually understanding the process behind. You're putting herbs on a cow's neck, right?
exactly.
But if you understand the whole process, you can do some really interesting shit. Just saying.
Rue is amazing. I'm sorry. I'm like, when you said like Rue, I was like, yes,
I
Rue
know.
Revelin. Like, let me tell you all about it.
We were actually discussing Rue's choice of name very recently. I was like, it's like the perfect name. Like, it's derived from like an old gamer name that you used to use, and it's also like a great pagan witch name, and it's also just very easy to remember.
Oh,
But
I'm
yeah,
the
like
trans that
even if you
aims to
bought
please.
even if you buy store-bought magic though, there's no guarantee that somebody who's going behind it like knows the process involved in doing those things. There's no, it is not to say that they intrinsically won't, right? Like I said, if you go to a legit practitioner who has like methods they've been learning and been doing for a while, a lot different, right? And you can always tell when you walk into that occult shop that really knows their shit versus the one that's just selling some stuff off of
I'd
base
also
knowledge, right?
say this, like, I think sometimes for some people, especially when you're new, it's harder to figure out the tells of a bad,
It's true.
occult
Yes,
shop
yes.
versus a good occult shop.
Now it's
So
instinctual. Now I
right
walk in and I'm like,
now you're like, let's
It's almost
side-eye
like a
this.
reaction, like your lip will curl and you'll go, "Ah."
Yeah, you're like,
Well, it's the lack. Like I walk in and I'm like, oh, I don't feel the thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I know because like if you, look, I'll tell you like this: if you walk into an occult shop or a spiritual supply shop of any kind, really, and it doesn't have that how do I put this?
Sacredness, maybe like a
Yeah, like it should
liminality.
feel as if, generally speaking, every like genuine occult shop I've ever been to, you walk in and all of a sudden, one, you feel incredibly protected but watched at the same time,
Hmm.
like you're in someone's
Not
home.
uncomfortable. You're just
No, but like
you have to be
as
on your
if
best
you're
behavior.
incredibly aware of a surveillance system that you
Right.
can't quite make. You know what I'm saying? But at the same time, you feel very safe and surrounded. There's a vibe, an
Right.
energy, and no real occult shop is going to go without their wards.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? As
Also,
somebody, Mhm.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, working at Harry's all those years ago, it's a big deal. Like you really got to ward occult shops because
Mhm.
envious people, man, they don't like to see
That's how I
you
was going
doing
to
well in the
interject.
occult.
Mm-hmm.
Wards trip the fuck up on occult shops, just saying.
Mm-hmm.
So like, and that's what I know. Like I went to one. I'm not going to name any names, obviously. I went to. It's more like it wasn't really even an occult shop. It was more like a metaphysical supply store.
Mm.
But they had some useful items, I should say. But I walked in there and I was like, ugh, let me just get this stuff
Yeah.
and be gone. And then of course
It's
the
just a
one the
supply
one
run.
lady, pretty much. And the one lady I remember, she was giving me a dirty look because I was talking about I was talking about the Petit Albert, the grimoire, the Petit Albert,
Mm-hmm.
and I was talking to a non-practitioner friend of mine who's always very interested in all this stuff, and she heard me talking about the grimoire traditions and the Petit Albert and everything else, and she got like really short with me. Like her attitude with me completely changed. Like
Hmm.
when I first walked in, she was like, "Hi, how can I help you?" Blah blah blah. And then when she heard me having this conversation, talking about, I guess, what to her would be considered, I don't know,
Black
intense
magic.
or black magic or whatever,
Yeah. Yeah.
the type.
Mm.
And all of a sudden, her
Mhm.
her demeanor completely changed. She was short, and like you could tell she had this sort of like she wasn't smiling anymore. She wasn't being polite, and it was like I wasn't in there very long for her to like suddenly have a bad day. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like it wasn't
Yeah.
like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
She was having a good day, and then she was blatantly listening to my conversation, which was obvious, and she did not like what I was saying. And
And then he
I've
turned
been
to you and
there,
said, Braria, get the fuck out.
Right.
and I've been there
Not
many
kidding.
times. But the thing is like you also know, I guess too, on an interpersonal level by sort of what they're comfortable with.
Mm.
I find that a practitioner, you could sit there and have a conversation about the grimoires, and you could sit there and have a conversation about demonolatry and conjuration and invocation, evocation, etc. The things that a lot of new age people find, that's diabolical, it's evil,
Right.
whereas for us, that's kind of like that's our thing. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like we may not all use those words, but essentially, that's our shtick, that's our thing.
I have
Mm-hmm.
a really interesting question.
Hmm.
I know they draw discretion personally off it, but really tell me functionally, what's the difference between invoking and channeling? I'll wait.
Mm.
Right. Which is why I said depending on the word you use, but it's also really funny because I've met a lot of these people. I had an intense debate, we'll call it that, over what I also use the term allowed possession. That's just like a general, without the jargon, right? And they were like, I'm a medium and I know for a fact that you shouldn't do that ever. And I was like, but what about all the ancient religions that have done it for literally thousands of years?
Like, what about
What
that?
if you're letting your fucking deity possess you, who you've been worshiping and been on a fucking close relationship with for like, I don't know, a decade or something?
Like, hop in my body, bro. Let's go.
But as soon as they were talking about as soon as they started with the whole fear-based religion nonsense, like the weird religiosity that comes out of like the New Age movement, as soon as I get hit with like demons and this sort of like analog energy for Christ thing, I'm kind of like, okay, I can see where like I'm not going to get anywhere here. Like,
yeah,
the conversation's going to end, and I'm not trying, like, as you can all tell, I hope our viewers can tell, I'm not trying to be mean, right? I just can tell that the conversation tends to end there for me.
Right, you just politely end the conversation and you kind of move on, because
I realized something.
Get a better discussion with a brick wall at that point.
Right. And to stay with the topic at hand, that's another good way to kind of know when to mosey on to another place, another shop. I'm sorry.
I gotta say this. Goetics is basically a litmus test then, right? Because one thing I've realized about any legit occult shop is you always, if you're legit, you walk in and you casually talk some theory or practice with the people in there, right? And unless you're like, you've been in there a million times, like I know I've been to the occult shop before, and I go in, I buy my fucking cascaria, my candles and my incense and my like just basic staples shit that you go through. And you're not in there to have a conversation about what they have in stock for their
just a
books
resupply
and what
mission
they're carrying or anything. Yeah, just a resupply mission sometimes, right? And sometimes you're in like asking when they're going to get a Hecate statuette so you can buy a proper one and put it back on your altar and shit, right? But if you talk about Goetics, I feel like that's really where practitioners reveal themselves, right? Because any practitioner worth their salt's going to laugh at you and say, don't do that. And you're going to say, why? And you're going to say, just Goetics aren't a bad time.
Oh no, Sophia, come back. You dropped out.
I would just like to take this opportunity. Scott mentioned viewers.
We have 6 viewers right now. What's up, 6 viewers?
I'm not trying to scare them away. Hi, people.
Sorry, Sophia, you cut out there for a second and we didn't hear you. But we also just noticed we have 6 viewers right now, which I think is the most that we've ever had at any one time. So hello.
Except that one time we got raided.
Oh yeah, we did get raided at one time. That is true.
But to repeat what I was saying when I blanked out, if you're doing Goetics, you need to be doing it in an abandoned industrial area, right? You need to have your lion's pelt belt or a facsimile of it, right? Whether or not you like literally kill a stuffed animal lion and strip its skin. Thanks, Fish, for the idea.
That's actually kind of, yeah.
Yeah. And you need like a gold ring, right? Like there's a whole bunch of granular shit you need for doing Goetics, and even then what you're trying to accomplish can be better off achieved by other stuff. So any experienced practitioner I know, when somebody comes into the shop and says, or the forums, and is like, how do y'all feel about Goetics? You usually tongue lash that person pretty hard, right? But without like assuming that they don't know their shit. Just be like, oh man, Goetics are fucking not something I would ever personally work with, and I would advise other people not to be honest. Like, the only people I know who fucked with Goetics successfully are, like, mages who've done this shit for over a decade before they decided to. You know what I mean?
I will say that I do not know enough about Goetics to form a solid opinion about how I feel about it. I have not read that deeply into it as of this point, so...
And that's the other thing that reveals that you're a legit practitioner. You'll just say, I don't think I know enough about Goetics, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not trying to put yourself on like you know fucking everything, right?
Yeah.
Like,
that's the other thing, too.
I don't know.
The way to not make friends in the occult world is to walk... So, like, as much as you're judging the shop itself, and you're like, all right, are you legit? Are you good? Whatever... You yourself cannot be a colossal douche nozzle walking into this store and being like, oh, hurdy-durdy-dur, I'm the mage of the 4th order of the hurdy-durdy-durs. No one cares. Get the fuck out. Okay? Just want to throw that out there too.
Yeah.
You don't gotta go in with any kind of mage bravado.
Don't go in grandstanding. I mean, like, I feel like everyone's been there, in the beginning.
Yes.
Like,
you're overcompensating.
You get the ego boost thing when you're new, but like, none of us know everything. And as far as like, like the Goetia and even just the grimoire tradition as a whole, I know, like, how do I put this? I know the spells found within old grimoires, but as far as like the way like the actual system of conjuration within grimoire, like that's
knock knock. I think Scott's in the kitchen. I think that's what. I feel like I hear kitchen noises in the background.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah.
You're in the kitchen?
I apologize.
Yeah, that's okay.
But what was I saying?
You're talking about the old grimoires and how you're like, I get the spells, but I don't know how to execute them.
I don't. Now I can, as far as like a folk magician's way of doing that.
Right, you
I
can
have that's easy for me. Right. That's something I can do. I don't necessarily have all the bells and whistles that a lot of the grimoire tradition has.
And I don't know if honestly that's my thing. Like I've talked about ceremonial magic and stuff before, like it definitely interests me, like to have this very specific form and this is how it's done. But all at the same time, I'm like, I don't know if I could put that much like energy and attention into that.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, like it's so much. And like if that was my only like job, maybe like if I didn't have to work full time and that was my full-time thing, just practicing ceremonial magic, sure, yeah, I'd probably really be into it. But a lot.
I follow two technically three, but I think only two of them actually post. One of them just comments on the other two's stuff. But on TikTok, I know, surprise, surprise, but these people actually are very accomplished grimoire magicians. And I follow them not out of the like I want to do it myself, but they're so dedicated. Like the one dude, like he had to have like a whole conversation with his landlord because like his landlord was like,
"What are you doing?"
Well, he had to go into the basement, and that's where he keeps his altar and all his temple set up. And like the dude uses a special kind of paint that could be like easily chipped up, but he like actually paints on the floor, but it's easy to come up.
Okay.
And
maybe like a chalk paint or something like that, or
I don't know what it is. Yeah, and he had to be like, look, but it's all like it's perfect, and like this dude like takes years to perform one ritual.
Wow.
Like he goes like all in on the grimoire tradition, like he follows it step by step by step, which technically speaking is how the grimoire tradition is supposed to be followed.
Right, that's the idea of it.
Because it
does not do well when it's fast tracked. It does not do well.
Right, like as me and Sophia have said before, ceremonial magic is a contained system. Each grimoire is a contained system of conjuration. Now that's a bit of a thing because there are some incomplete grimoires that have been, parts of it lost to time, some of it, what have you. But in general, grimoires are a complete system and have to be followed as such, or else you start breaking apart the equations that make it work.
And that's also true of your own grimoire. So, like, think for example, like if, I don't know, like this will never happen, but like, society collapses, right? And the next humans are digging through the ashes of our society and they find your grimoire, right? So your grimoire is found, years after you are long and gone. But that system of magic is still you. It is your personal practice, and so if someone was to follow your magic in your grimoire, it is yours. So it would be a self-contained system. And so, like, don't discount your own magic too. Like, just because these grimoires were written hundreds, thousands, whatever years ago, doesn't make them more or less powerful or important as your own grimoire.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'll give a thought on that quickly. We call a bunch of Wiccans what? They're named after Gerald
Gardner.
They're Gardnerians, right?
Yeah, that's
just one. How old is Gerald Gardner? I don't know, not even 200 years old, obviously, right? I don't know, like 100. something like that, right? 1920s,
Within, yeah,
1930s,
like within
I
modern
guess.
era, yeah. I don't
Yeah,
think he's
and people fucking name their traditions and their style of practice after him because
right.
he was so influential, right? Don't
Mhm.
discredit yourself just because you're from the modern times. Just
Right.
saying that.
Like, look at how
Absolutely.
much like Wicca has grown, and how Wicca has helped. Like I think Wicca has like the publicity of Wicca, and also like bringing in real witchcraft into things like Sabrina, like the Sabrina reboot and
Hmm.
everything. I think bringing that in is
Calling fucking Hecate in, yeah.
right, yeah, and like doing stuff like that. Like, but I think Wicca in particular has really helped the occult movement overall. Like, just any like I just think it's just helped overall, because like I know Wicca gets a bad name a lot of times, but most of the Wiccans that I know are just people just doing magic just like us. You know what I mean? They're just doing it
Yeah,
their way.
absolutely.
And on
That's
that
another
note,
subject I can go off on
Oh my,
too.
yeah.
I'm gonna go off on something too. Everybody needs to shut the fuck up and stop shitting on
Everyone.
TikTok witches. I'll tell you fucking why. Okay? One of my good friends, she's not a witch at all, okay? Or at least wasn't. I was talking about egregore theory and creation, and she completely fucking understood it because she spent so much time on TikTok. She already knew a nuanced difference between a fucking tulpa and an egregore, and she showed me one of the videos she's seen on it, and I'm like,
It's so
so
funny that you mention egregore, because I just saw on Twitter the other day. I was on the Witches Betwixt Twitter and just following and browsing, and this guy posted. He was like, I think we should remove the word egregore from the occult vocabulary, blah blah blah, because apparently like everyone's just like talking about egregores now. I'm like, what? So you just want it
look,
because it's not
egregore
cool
theory is
anymore?
hot because
Because it's not this little niche
egregore theory
thing?
is hot right now because people are fucking making leaps and bounds in results by doing group working, right?
Right.
I'm sorry to break it to that salty magician, whoever he is, but chaos magic as a whole, because it's a lot fucking bigger than DKMU, and sometimes I fail to make that discretion, honestly.
Yeah, DKMU does
Chaos
not
magic
have
as
the
a whole,
monopoly on chaos magic.
certainly not.
No.
We are one of the bigger groups out there, and definitely one of the ones that has a air of we actually have an idea
Presence.
of what the fuck we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's not to say that like we invented all the techniques. Like fuck, I can't tell you how many times I've thought that somebody in the group made something, and then I asked that person, they're like, no, I actually reposted it from here, right?
Mm.
It's kind of like the telephone game, right? You're
Right.
always working with like some level of information that's incorrect, right?
Mm-hmm.
But egregore theory is fucking hot for a good reason, right? And we have been in the modern nomenclature as chaos magicians for at least fucking 2 decades now. Like this shit's been going since like the fucking 80s. Who am I kidding,
Right.
right? Um it's about fucking time that egregores popped off the way that sigil magics popped off. Everybody and their dog can tell you how to make a sigil pretty much,
Yeah.
right? And most people will do it in an entirely uninspired way using
The
the
letters.
Austin Osman spare method. And that's not to shit on the Austin Osman spare method. If you can make it work really well for you, fucking power to you,
It's also a
right?
very good
I
introduction.
personally do not make my sigils with the Austin Osman spare method, and I don't like to call it the AOS because that loses the context of where it came from.
Mm.
I like to do a completely different method, which is like sitting down and ramming my face at paper for hours and hours and hours on end until the sigil that I initially hated and feel like doesn't work has been refined to the point where it really has that fucking resonance, you know?
Mm.
Like I will spend 6+ fucking hours if I have to. I'm not exaggerating.
You did
Working on a
most of
single sigil.
the sigil. I think you did the sigil construction really for the Betwixt part of our logo. That
Yeah,
was like
I
largely
did.
you. I still have your original sketches, I
I
think, somewhere in there.
offloaded some of it. Like I said to everybody, we need, because I didn't want to just like spearhead it because I could
Right.
do that and it would have the energy like I had done it, right? So I
Mm.
was like, we need everybody to pitch in a few symbols, and then I will draw it through my handwriting, which will give it a unified shape. And then we can send it off to somebody to do a professional version of it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I spearheaded making it happen, but also y'all gave some like the best sigils. Like I think one of my favorite sigils out of it is like the crossed eye with the X that Scott did, with like the arrow through it. And yeah, that was like collectively us, like we did that together, right? But like if I'm doing a sigil, if I spend 6 fucking hours on it one day and I don't like it, it's not done. I will couch it in a book, sometimes come back to it later. Like I had a symbol for bloom that I was using, and I fucking hated it. And eventually one day I was like, no, this can't be it. And I spent at least 4 hours on it, right? And the symbol now for bloom is amazingly simple, but it's intuitive, it's recognizable, you don't mistake it for other stuff, and it's really easy to draw, right? And the sigil doesn't even necessarily have to be that. Like look at Doombringer, right? Fuck, I'm just ranting about sigils at this point. Anyways, I'll get off that soapbox. Point being, we are finally giving egregore theory and practice the level of minutia and care that it deserves. Kind of like we've been doing with like sigil crafting for fucking decades, right? It's about fucking time that modern chaos magic and modern magicians found something new they could sink their teeth into to grow and develop a little bit, right?
Right. We need
Anybody
some
who's
common
salty about it
ground.
needs to get over it.
Yeah, I completely agree. To kind of circle it back to kind of what we were, like the topic of today, like store-bought versus homemade stuff. What are some instances where like, because I have many store-bought like sprays, like I have a Mercury retrograde spray that I bought from someone at Pagan Pride.
Fuck.
I have like an energy vampire spray, bought from the same person actually. I really like their sprays; they're very good. So I was just curious, like, like, are there any particular products that you may have bought, like, or maybe like spell kits, or that just really actually worked?
Let me roll you through my altar right now, and I'll just list off items that I've purchased rather than collecting myself, just to give a scope how wide and how big this is, okay? I have a Vajra, don't at me. I have coyote teeth, coyote claws, fox claws, a coyote tail, an Athame, a Hecate that I got at a Salvation Army at a 3-way crossroads, a braid of sweetgrass with a hawk feather in it. I have an entire suite of planetary inks, magnetic sand, lodestones, coffin nail. Yeah, y'all know. A Eye of Nazar or Amulet of Nazar. Pink women candles. Fuck, what else we got here? Sulfur cascaria. Incense, a whole fucking bunch of stones ain't gonna list, and some yak bone prayer beads. And that's just like a casual look at my altar right now, right? Like there's no way you're gonna make all that fucking shit. Oh, and 100% pure lavender oil. Yeah.
And all of these things work.
Frankincense and myrrh and sulfur.
Right, and all of these things, they work just fine in any of, anything that you're doing with them, and they're all store-bought. What about you, Scott? Anything in particular? I mean, I know, like, we all have a lot of stuff that we've all bought, but, like, I'm just curious about, like, spells, maybe, like spell kits or...
I generally don't buy spell kits. That goes a little too far. Like, I will buy supplies to do those spells. Like, I will buy an oil from somebody to work a particular spell.
Yeah, okay.
But spell kits, I kind of need spells to be my own thing. But one particular product that me and Darian have been using a lot. Hold on, it's right at this little ancestral shrine I set up in my living room. Hold on. One of the people from Pagan Pride Day, one of the sellers, called Celestial Healing Arts. It is an energetic clearing, cleansing, and protection spray. And this stuff is amazing. It kind of like washes away like the miasma of the day, everything you collect from other people, and the environments you walk in and everything else. So like when we come in and like wash our hands physically, we come over to our little shrine area and just spritz ourselves down to get rid of the energetic
Ugh.
gunk, and that stuff
Yeah.
is great.
That's good.
And then also too, the same company that you bought your sprays from, we have an invisibility spray.
Oh yeah,
Protection invisibility spray.
Let me plug them. Belladonna's Botanicals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they're
really
great.
good.
And
Those
they're
sprays are on
local to
point.
us, right? They're
Yeah.
Philadelphia area.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they were at they're actually a friend of one of our board members.
Oh, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Martine works for them.
Yeah, Martine works for the shop.
Speaking of Goetics, a lot of that I know a lot of their stuff is consecrated using the Goetic spirits.
Oh, really? I didn't know.
Yeah.
That.
Yep.
Today I learned.
Yeah. Thought that was cool.
So I'm curious though, because like I'm thinking about, because like one of I know one of Jim's like bread and butter things is like his candle spells that like that he dresses, right? So like money, luck, prosperity. You know, he's got like the whole line. Anything that you need in your life, he's got it. So I was thinking about that. I was like, do you think that? Because I know, like in the past, it's been said like you shouldn't gear your occult shop toward practitioners, but I disagree with that now because I think now is the time to do that. Not exclusively, but like cater it to both. Cater it to the normies and cater it to also practitioners as well. So do you think that like things like spell kits and dressed candles and things like that, do you think those are more catered toward the normies as opposed to, or maybe like people flirting with the idea of magic?
I think, yeah, I would say it's at people who were at that level of like, is this for me? Do I believe in it? Is magic real? I want to see it for myself. You
Like I'm
know,
gonna cast a money spell and kind of see like what happens.
right. I want to know how I feel about it. Because a lot of the time, too, I realize with those people, they want to know how they feel whilst doing it. And I think sometimes it's not really about they're trying to prove anything, but they're trying to prove to them that it's something that like
that they like and they enjoy.
They can feel comfortable in.
Yeah.
You know, I think a lot of the time they do believe, and that's why they're trying it out. But they just want to know, you know, do you feel silly? And yes, sometimes you do.
Sometimes I still feel silly when I'm doing magic. Sometimes I
it's
do.
very normal.
Yeah.
But that goes that you learn how to cope with that over
Yes.
time.
Yeah, you
But
do.
to get to it, I think that like things like spell kits are definitely for young practitioners, you know, the teens, you know, that are in high school who, you know, maybe don't have a lot of money, you know, or means to get stuff. I think it's good for them. I tend to think that when practitioners go, one thing I've always noticed is that when practitioners themselves go to an occult shop, they're very intentional and they make a beeline for everything they need.
Right.
This is like
looking for
grocery
supplies.
shopping.
Yeah.
They shop very intentionally.
Sometimes we do just check shit out though,
I mean,
right? Like
yeah.
there's so many times I'm like, what do you got in your book?
I love browsing. Window shopping is my favorite kind of shopping because it doesn't cost me money, but I get to look at pretty things.
It's like it's too much of a tease for me, but I have a shopping addiction, so
That's
when I have money, I
I
like to spend it.
That's fair.
Hello.
Honestly, fair. Like some days I'm just like, I want to buy a book because I have money and I can. Damn it.
But yeah, I mean,
but I do think they're effective though. Like I think, especially if they're made from a good practitioner. So I think like, you know, if you are buying a spell kit or anything, because like I know for me as a practitioner at the level that I am, I'm like, oh, if I need to do a working for my health, right? I'm definitely, I should say, like, I'm definitely not going to buy a spell kit or like a pre-dressed candle from someone. I'm going to do my own working the way that I need to, whatever. But I do think that in addition, like, so you could buy the spell kit and you could like deconstruct it, right? Understand each component, research each component of that spell kit, and understand like, okay, well, why did they use this thing and not this thing? You know, I also saw that this was for like money drawing or prosperity or whatever the working is about. So like really, so if you do get a spell kit or like a dress candle or anything like that, deconstruct it in your mind, write it down in your grimoire. What were the components in that? And look up those associations and understand why those
Ooh,
things were
yes.
used. It's a really good way to learn.
Yes.
I will chip in on this though.
Mm.
A lot of people who do their witchcraft for a living will not tell you what's in shit, right? Like, a great example is you'll go to like the occult shop and
I
you'll
would like
have
to
like
butt in. I would just like to
Hecate
butt.
herbs.
Hun, we're
What's
not
up?
live.
What?
No.
We're black. Like we're live, but our screen's
Uh-oh.
black. I just before people kept talking, I was just trying.
Why?
Like there's no cameras, there's no screen. I don't want to turn on the sound because that'll
Troubleshoot.
create an echo.
What about now? Why?
Yeah, I don't know. It just went black.
Restart Streamlabs.
Just want to look at the. Yeah, we're not like Twitch.